All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. I hope you're doing well. So, folks, today we're going to talk about old Stockton Rush and his imploded submarine business. Do you want to go to the bottom of the ocean? It's real fun. You get to sit on the cold floor for 10 hours and stare out of the small window into black nothingness. It's $250,000. We take check. What do you mean you don't want to go? What? You talked to a friend and they said it was unsafe? Well, no offense to this friend, but they sound a little bit boring and uninspiring. It is very safe. Really very safe. And you know what I always say, if you don't want to take risks, don't get out of bed in the morning, so to speak. Also, did I mention that we do have an empty seat if you want to bring your kid? After we talk about Stockton, I also have a couple wild stories from the week before the sub imploded from Mount Everest. It's that time of year again, folks, where the weather is good enough to make a push for the summit. Always good for a couple ridiculous stories, and I figured I'd add them into this episode because in a way these are all stories from the same genre, which is high-end adventure tourism. Wow. All right, but let's talk about Stockton Rush first. I listened to every interview, every podcast that Stockton did, and I think it's safe to say Stockton really liked to do an interview and play the part of the wacky, eccentric sub-captain / company owner. He loved the look on the face of the interviewer when they said, "So you really use a video game controller to control your submarine at the bottom of the ocean?" That's right, everybody else uses high-end and expensive equipment. We here at OceanGate use junk from the dollar store. Seems like Stockton had the attitude, everybody else in this stagnant industry is bogged down with stodgy safety protocols, boring certifications, uninspiring. None of the bums or cowards in the industry have the balls or the brains for true ingenuity. They wouldn't know the big advancement if it smacked them in the face. So where did Stockton get all of this confidence from? I think it goes back when he was 19, he got his pilot's license, and then he got even whatever's above a pilot's license, like a captain's license or something. Apparently it was impressive at an impressively young age, so he's got his pilot's license. His first dream was to be an astronaut, and then at some point the dream flipped upside down and he decided there's a lot more to discover in the bottom deep ocean than in deep space, so he decided, I want to be a deep sea submarine captain. And there was a debate raging 30 years ago, he said, on whether you could make an airplane out of composite material like fiberglass or carbon fiber, like what he made his submarine out of. And people were saying, you can't use composite material. You're going to break up in midair. It's going to be a disaster. You got to use metal. And he decided, I'm going to make a fiberglass plane. And he said, everybody was telling him, don't do it, Stockton. Don't make your fiberglass plane. It's a bad idea. You got to use metal. And he likes to tell the story where he built the fiberglass plane 30 years ago and he's still flying it today. And then 10 or 12 years ago, he said he realized you can't go on a submarine if you want to. A normal person can't book a trip on a tourist sub to go to the bottom of the ocean. You can't rent a submarine. The most you can do is go to Hawaii and do a tourist sub, but it only goes to the depth of scuba diving, so just barely below the surface. And the gears were turning in Stockton Rush's head. Hey, there's an opportunity to start a submarine tourism company, and that really is perfect because I want to be a submarine captain. And the tourists solve two major issues. One, they pay for the thing. Without rich billionaire tourists coming on with their $250,000, it's hard to get one of these missions off the ground. James Cameron, the super rich director, when he did his record dive to the bottom of the ocean, he used a bunch of his money and he partnered up with National Geographic, so that's how they made it work. But without doing stuff like that, can't really just bleed yourself money doing dive after dive, so you need someone to pay for it. And secondly, it makes it a lot more fun to have tourists there. New people looking out the window. If you're just going down with the same boring scientist or by yourself over and over again, it loses its luster. But if you're always seeing it through the eyes of some interested tourist, it makes the whole thing a lot more fun. And more importantly, it pays for the whole thing. And it allows Stockton to live the submarine captain lifestyle and do that as a profession instead of an extremely expensive hobby. So why was there not another tourism submarine company that brings people to the bottom of the ocean? Well, because it's staggeringly expensive to do one of these dives, and you have to have a big mothership that brings the submarine out into the middle of the ocean and can hang out in the middle of the ocean and have a crew and to have cooks, and just the expensive to have the big mothership that sits on the top and waits for the sub and the crew and everything is so expensive it will make your eyes roll. And that's not even bringing in the cost of building the submarine. And what's wild is they build these submarines and you do test dives and practice dives, but they normally retire them after one huge deep dive. Like when Cameron broke the record, I think they built the sub. It took 8 years, millions and millions of dollars, and they did the one big dive, and that was it. And so that's not really... When you start a sub business, you want to get the mothership. All right, we got our big boat that can launch the sub and get the sub back on, and the tourists can stay on it and eat on it. You want to get that, and you want to get the sub paid for, and then do as many dives as possible without having to buy a new mothership or a new submarine. But that's not really how it works. You got to retire the sub every time. Man, that is a huge complication and hurdle to get over to run a tourism submarine company. And then, if you figure all of that nightmare mess out, all of the submarines fit one person barely. Just because of the physics of the whole thing, no submarine existed that could fit 5 people. And that's, according to Stockton, how many people you need to have to really do it right, because you have the captain and then 2 pairs of people. He said you got to let them bring someone if you want it to be a true tourist trip. They can't just be on their own. So it was really important for Stockton to be able to bring 5 people down. Well, there isn't a sub that exists that fits that much. And so Stockton did what he did 30 years before. Everyone was telling him, don't build your plane out of fiberglass. It's going to be a disaster. I think that same confidence and that same idea, I am going to build my submarine out of carbon fiber. And it's going to save me money. And we're going to be able to do it big enough to bring tourists down, and no one else in the industry was smart enough or had the courage to do what I'm going to do, and he built a sub out of carbon fiber. Look at that. It's huge. It's huge, and it's plastic. Okay. Everything I've noticed that can go really in the deep ocean sort of ends up looking the same. Steel and then all of a sudden there's the plastic tube from Ocean Gate, the Titan. The front part that had the metal and the little small circle window, that's looking like what you want for deep sea stuff, but the long plastic part, I don't know, Stockton, it's looking a little crappy towards the back. But anyway, they build this sub. Stockton goes on the first dive alone all the way down. He tells a wild story. He's all the way down thousands and thousands of feet by himself. It's dark. He's staring out. It's just dark with white particles, and he's down there alone. He goes, man, this is so wild. And if he would have just done stuff like that, like I'm an adventurer and an explorer, and I'm going to try out a composite type sub, And if it implodes and I get turned into well-done hamburger meat, hey, I lived life to the fullest and lived an adventure. But once you bring in I can't really afford to live my captain submarine dream without bringing tourists and maybe their kids and stuff along, it really changes the whole story. So anyway, he's testing his carbon fiber submarine. They're doing trips, they're doing dives, and slowly but surely, pretty much everybody that Stockton knows was emailing him or telling him, I don't know, Stockton, it's not looking good. It creaks and cracks really bad when you submerge it down, and all these other subs, after a few dives, they retire them, and you got to build a whole nother one. Well, you can't really do that. Everybody, business is on hold for 2 years while we build another sub. That's not how a business works. And Stockton said in a podcast he was on the board of a couple companies before he started OceanGate, so he got some really good experience, saw how companies worked, kind of got bit by the business bug a little bit, and then OceanGate was his baby. And he mentioned, someone asked him, like, what's some of the coolest accomplishments of your life? And he mentioned one of them, that he has the successful business in OceanGate. So it was really important to be a successful business owner and to show all of the people in the industry. He said they were all calling me nuts, and they're still calling me nuts, but they have less conviction when they call me nuts now. Pretty much saying everybody told him, you can't make a sub out of carbon fiber, especially a big plastic, huge one. It's going to implode and you're going to kill people. And it was really important to him to prove all of them wrong. I'm the genius in the room. You guys aren't. This is a successful business. But that pressure to keep it successful, you can't be the sales manager and also the safety operator and also the runner of a business, because as all of his friends and colleagues are going, it's making cracking and creaking sounds. Maybe you should not do any tours or any dives, cancel the ones you have booked with the tourist, and maybe build another sub or retire this one. You can't do that. You got to keep the whole thing rolling. We got to do dives. This is a business, right? We can't just pause for 2 years and build another submarine. Are you crazy? We got to go to the Titanic. We got to do another mission. So there's a lot of where you just have to have the tourists because they got to pay for it. It makes it more fun. And yet once you're going in the business, there's a lot of pressures to keep the whole thing going. And another major complication is Stockton said the Titanic is pretty much the one thing people want to pay to see right now. They would have loved to do other sites and other shipwrecks and vents in the bottom of the ocean. Would have been way better for the company if what everybody wanted to see was just 30 feet off the coast of Florida. But he said the draw was Titanic. But Titanic is 400 miles from land in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean. That's such a tough place to operate the business. There's weather, trips get canceled. So many challenges for a submarine tourism company that's not even, is the submarine gonna implode? And so I think that, I'm getting a call, let me get rid of it. I think that that Stockton, he had to tell himself, like, everybody that's telling me someone is going to get hurt, you can't do it. I think that he thought, I'm the genius in the room. And it made me think of the classic quote, which is, what is it? Oh, I wrote it down. When a true genius appears in the world, you may know him by this sign, that the dunces are all in confederacy against him. So Stockton thought he was the genius and all the other dunces were in confederacy against him. The problem was he was just a guy, and the genius was probably some other just quiet guy that thought, it'd be cool to start a submarine tourism company, but I don't want to implode somebody and kill a teenager. And I think where Stockton makes himself from an impressive, brave explorer. Wow, he did some cool stuff. He took some risks and pretty badass explorer. He went from that to more of an Elizabeth Holmes, Billy McFarland, the Fire Festival type person, which they start a business and it gets to the point where the business should probably be shut down. Someone's going to get hurt. There's not enough money to run it the way it needs to be run. You gotta admit defeat. And most people, 98, 99% of the people would say, okay, we're putting an end to this right now. Someone is gonna get hurt. I'm bummed that my business, my baby is going out of business, and I'm bummed I'm not gonna be a submarine captain, and I'm bummed everybody that told me that I shouldn't do it and that couldn't be done. I'm bummed that they were right and I was wrong, but I don't want someone to get hurt, so I'm going to shut the whole thing down. And then the people like Stockton and like Elizabeth Holmes and like that, they're the type, they have some personality quirk or defect or something where they can plow through that. And he was getting email after email of, this is unsafe, it doesn't sound good, you can't do it. And he was able to say, oh, that is baseless cries. They're just jealous I did what none of them were able to do, while he's desperately and frantically trying to fill all the seats on his sub dives because you need enough money to keep the whole thing going. I want to be a sub captain. I need more rich tourists to pay for my whole dream. And so the conversation he had with the Las Vegas billionaire that was going to go on with his son, but they backed out, really shows kind of how desperate and sad Stockton would get as he needed to fill the seats. Because maybe he was all about safety when all of the seats were filled and money was looking good and we got all the dives planned. But during we gotta make sales, this is a business, I think probably safety floated back in the back corners of his mind, and he's texting the Vegas billionaire, so you guys don't want to come? And the billionaire's going, yeah, I don't know, my son talked to a friend and he said it could be really unsafe. And Stockton is going, it's safer than riding in a helicopter, it's safer than going scuba diving, which he was just talking out of his butt. He's not basing that off of anything, and let the evidence show the dive didn't go great, the infamous dive that the billionaire from Las Vegas and his son decided, nah, we don't want to go on. And then the Pakistan father and son went on it instead. And so the tone that he was saying, oh, come on, it's barely even dangerous, really shows that maybe Stockton Rush had a good heart, but the delusion that he had and the fact that he thought himself a real genius and everybody else was just kind of an idiot makes him a really dangerous person. So they all get in the sub, they go down. As of the filming of this, it sounds like they went down and then something happened. I would guess it started creaking and cracking like the email chain he had with his friend, and they figured, we got to go back up. And then as they started going back up, thwomp, it implodes. Implosions are so brutal and violent. You got to take a second to just marvel at the whole thing. In a millisecond, they went from walking, talking, thinking humans to well-done cooked hamburger meat. Think about that, how fast that is and how loud, and it's in the ocean and just whoom, loud and fast, and then all of a sudden, it's the calm vastness of the ocean again. I can't help but think of Stockton saying all the phrases that he said, like, you're remembered for the rules you break, and I've broken some rules, all of stuff like that. If you don't want to take risks, don't get out of bed. I run in my head him saying that, and then it snap cuts to a fish placidly chewing on Stockton's well-done cooked hamburger meat body that just got imploded. And it is a wild story. I would guess that the submarine tourism industry is going to slow way down. from here. But crazy stuff. All right, let's talk about the week before the submarine saga. Everyone's making the push for the summit on Everest, and a Malaysian climber falls down. He's tired. He's out of oxygen in the dead zones, or in the death zone. So way up where there's barely any oxygen, you freeze to death. I think you have about 12 hours of hiking and climbing ahead of you still. And this Malaysian climber is already laying in the fetal position, unconscious. So that's about as dead as you can get. The man is a dead man laying right there in the snow. Well, a Sherpa on another expedition walks up on him and goes, oh my gosh, this guy is still alive. I'm going to try to strap this guy on my back and walk him down, do the impossible and walk him down from the death zone. And the climber that the Sherpa was with was like, no, it's an impossible mission. I paid $100,000 to go to the top. I don't want to cancel my plans and my dream to try to rescue this guy. And the Sherpa was like, we got to try to do it. So the Sherpa wraps him up in blankets. It looked ridiculous. Strapped the guy to his back and hiked for 6 hours. That is as impressive as any athletic feat a pro athlete has done this year. These guys are so strong and fit. It's mind-boggling. And so he hikes this Malaysian climber down for 6 hours, almost collapses with exhaustion, gets him to another Sherpa, but at that point they're to the easier part, and they get this Malaysian climber down. Well, the Malaysian climber wakes up, hey, I'm alive. I climbed Everest. And he goes back to Malaysia and starts posting on Instagram, I would like to thank my insurance company for being alive still. And everyone's like, what? You thanked your insurance company? What about the Sherpa that lugged you down the mountain? And then it came out that the guy blocked the Sherpa on Instagram before he did that post. And then another story very similar, a 50-year-old Chinese woman climber, same thing, unconscious, in the death zone. Her glove was off, her hand was black with frostbite, and a couple Sherpas see her and go, all right, let's try to do the impossible and get her down the mountain. I think they climbed with her on the back. Oh yeah, a detail of the story that I can't forget is, so the Sherpas are looking at this Chinese woman in her 50s laying in the death zone, unconscious with the black frostbitten hand. And 2 other Chinese climbers say to this Sherpa that has the strength and the ability to maybe pull off the impossible and get her down. And they said, if you do this, if you change your plans and go a whole another direction, and the climbers you're helping, they don't get their dream, if you do that and you get her down, she'll pay you $10,000. I know it's a lot to ask to try to hike someone off out of the death zone, but if you do that, she'll give you $10,000. And the Sherpa was like, all right, we'll try to save this lady. And they do the impossible, and they hiked her all the way down, and she makes it. And then she wakes up and she's conscious, and they go, okay, we told them when you were unconscious, as dead as you could possibly be in the death zone, we told the Sherpa just to take care of him, that if you could make it down and you survive, you'll pay him $10,000. And she refused. And if you have $100,000 to climb Mount Everest, you got an extra 10 to give the Sherpa that saved your life. I mean, can you imagine? And then the 2 climbers that promised the Sherpa the 10 grand, when they heard, she goes, I'll pay you $4,000. How about that? When the climbers that promised the Sherpa, she'll give you $10,000. When they heard that, they go, oh my God, all right, well, we'll pay you. So out of their pocket, they paid the other 6 to the Sherpa. And the woman, that her life was saved, but I'll pay you 4. She's trying to haggle. That story goes totally viral in China, and everyone's shaming her. Like, are you kidding me? These people did something that even a few years ago, you never heard of someone strapping a down climber to their back and getting them down the mountain. These Sherpas, just the skill and strength and just toughness is something else. And it gave me an idea for a business that I think I could maybe pitch on Shark Tank. And I've been working on my pitch. I'm going to show it to you guys. So here we go. Hi Sharks, my name's Scott and I'm seeking $200,000 for 15% equity in my company, the Sherpa Ride Capsule. Have you ever wanted to climb Mount Everest, but you're in nowhere near good enough shape? Well, now you can. Simply get into one of our capsules. A Sherpa will strap you to his back and lug your fat ass up the mountain. Our capsules are heated, air-conditioned, equipped with Wi-Fi, all your favorite streaming platforms, video games, and stocked full of candy and soda. There's even a little button that when pushed gives your Sherpa a little shock to let him know, hey, pick it up a little bit there, Sherpy. We don't got all day. My Instagram followers are waiting for a mission update. Once you get to the top, you simply get out of the capsule feeling warm and well rested to take your picture at the summit, guaranteed to get a satisfying amount of likes. So Sharks, which one of you want to join me and climb to the top of the industry? I feel like the Sharks would be like, Scott, that's a terrible idea and borderline offensive. And for those reasons, I'm out. Another story, I could have maybe even do this as its own episode, but another story sort of in this same genre is a whole family from Illinois about a year ago goes out to Florida and they want to parasail. And so they find a parasailing company. All right, here's the boat captain. And the weather wasn't looking too great that day. It's kind of getting a little windy, but the parasailing boat captain said, nah, it's all right, we can do it, let's go out and do it. So the big family, I think it's like 11 people, all go out on this parasailing boat, and the mom and 2 kids are the ones that actually get hooked up to the parasail, and they get them out and they're floating above the boat. Well, the wind and the storm really got bad to the point they shouldn't have even been out there. They shouldn't have done it. And the boat captain, whose name is, this guy is something else, Daniel Couch. So the boat captain, Daniel Couch, loses control. They're up there blowing in the wind, and it starts to drag his boat where he doesn't have total control of the boat. And that's where he makes a really bizarre decision, and he decides he's going to cut the rope that is connecting the mother and 2 children that are up there flying in the storm wind. The only connection they have to the boat is this rope, and Daniel Couch decides he's going to cut the rope. And so, to the horror of everybody else in the family, Daniel cuts the rope. Well, now they're just flying with the parachute in the really strong wind. It brings them down. It's ramming them into the water. And the family's going, what are you doing? You got to help them. And Daniel Couch isn't doing much of anything. He's sitting there and he's watching the whole horror show play out, and they're headed towards this bridge, and the husband is begging him, please, can you help? Can you help them? Can you do something? And Daniel's going, when they hit the bridge, it'll catch the parachute, and then it'll stop them, and then we'll be able to get him. Well, they slam into the bridge. They're stuck underwater. Other boats are out there rushing in to pull out the unconscious bodies of one of the kids. The mom died, the dead body. And again, Daniel Couch, the parasailing captain, just either he froze or he was so mad that the whole thing was happening, he kept downplaying it in his mind, like, oh, this isn't that serious of a situation. The parachute will fall into the water, and then we'll grab them. Oh, now they're headed to the bridge. Once it hits the bridge, then we'll easily pull them out. I can't believe this is happening. He didn't do anything. And an investigation happens, and now Daniel Couch, his trial's coming up, is looking at a manslaughter charge for just doing nothing. To the point where it's, I don't know, you would think even selfishly, if you just pretend to do everything you can once the shit hits the fan, you probably wouldn't get a manslaughter charge. It would have just been, man, what a horrible event that happened. All you gotta do is try, but he did nothing. It's chilling. So we'll see how that trial goes. And then another story, it reminded me, my family used to go rafting on the Colorado River every year, every couple years in Glenwood Canyon, and it's real deal rapids, not to be played around with. We would go with the company where you have a young, strong, professional rafter with big oars in the top middle, and they yell out who needs to do what to make it through. Well, this family, a couple days before we got there and everyone was kind of somber and in a weird mood. We were like, what the hell happened? And they said 2 days ago, this family gets up, big family gets up there and said, we're going to run the river. We want to do some rafting. And there was small kids and like an 80-year-old woman, the grandma was there. And they tried to say, like, listen, the river is really running this year. And you got to be really careful with you got some young kids, an older lady, and apparently the family met that concern with, she's a tough old bird. If she falls in the river, I'm more concerned with the river than I am with her. And Grandma fell in, and Grandma drowned. And even though I wasn't there, to this day, I have flashbacks because the canyon walls really make the echo. They go straight up on both sides. So we would always scream, and then it echoes. So I have these flashbacks of all of the screaming and horror as Grandma falls in, and then they can't get to her. And then they're getting farther away, and they're going, oh my gosh. And even with the river was running so high and fast, even with a high quality life vest, she didn't make it. So scary stuff, wild industry. I'm going to cut it off there. I love you all. See you next time. Why? Stiving why? Shah me.